Hello everyone, welcome to another video. My name is Jamie. Welcome. So today we're going to be discussing all things books. We're going to be talking all about books that I have read this year now that we're halfway through the year. And the best way to do that, I think, is a book tag, which I never do tags. I never do them. But this one is definitely one of my favorites. I feel like this is the one tag that everyone does every year. And it is the mid-year book freakout tag. This has been around since as long as I've been on BookTube. And I really like it because it's just a really good excuse to talk about all of your reading this year. Some really great questions. And yeah, I'm really excited to get into it. I will leave all of the questions for this tag down below. So if you are interested in doing this video, I would love to see it. I would love to see you guys answer these questions. And yeah, without further ado, we're just gonna get into the video. So the first question for this tag is the best book that you've read all year. This is definitely a tricky one because I have read so many beautiful books this year, but the one that I chose was 7 Days in June by Tia Williams. I actually read this in like January or February, so really early on in the year, and it was just amazing, like a really great start to 2023. This book is so beautiful. It is a second chance romance between our two main characters, Eva and Shane. They both had quite a traumatic childhood, like quite a difficult past. They spend a week together when they're young and they have this really intense relationship, and then they never hear from each other ever again. And we follow Eva as Shane kind of comes back into her life. They are both relatively famous authors, so I love books about authors. Like, first of all, that was just like a massive tick for me, but watching their love story and watching them fall in love again for the second time was so beautiful. Our main character Eva deals with chronic migraines, and so I really loved the representation of a chronic illness, and I just loved it. It's so beautifully written, and this definitely, I am proud to say, is the best book that I have read so far this year. So the next question is the best sequel that you've read all year, and this one was a super easy choice for me. I actually read this book very recently and absolutely fell in love, gave it 5 out of 5 stars, and it is As Good as Dead by Holly Jackson. This is the third and final installment in the Good Girl's Guide to Murder series. I started reading that series last year and I finally finished it like last month, even a couple of weeks ago. And I adored this book. It was the perfect ending. If you haven't read A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, like, take it from me, that is one of the best YA series I've ever read in my life. It's a series of YA mystery thrillers, and our main character Pip, she's just a little bit of an investigator. She's a little bit of a Nancy Drew, but she gets into some really dangerous situations, and just the way the book is written is so amazing. It's so bingeable, it's so addicting, and the final book just gave me all of the emotions. It wrapped up so nicely and so emotionally, and it was just perfect. So definitely the winner for best sequel that I've read this year. The next question is a new release that you haven't read yet but want to. And of course, I'm going to be selecting Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. This actually came out last month and I have a copy on the way to me. I don't own it just yet, but I do have my copy hopefully shipped by now. I bought a signed hardback from Blackwell's, which is a book website that I'm using to replace Book Depository, and they had a signed copy and I was like, okay, I need you. I think the only reason I haven't read this yet is just purely because I don't have it in my hands just yet, but I will be reading it so soon. I promise you that. I absolutely love R.F. Kuang. R.F. Kuang has written my favorite fantasy series, which is The Poppy War, and I read Babel in February, really loved that, so I'm really excited to read her newest work. This is more of a contemporary literary tale about the publishing industry, and it also deals with some topics when it comes to race and white people kind of, I guess, culturally appropriating or stealing ideas from POC. I honestly don't know all that much about it, and I'm hoping to go in pretty blind, so I haven't done too much reading. I haven't read many reviews or anything, but I'm so excited to read this. I know that I'll love it. Rebecca Kuang is, I think, one of the best, if not the best, writers of our time right now. I cannot believe she's younger than me. Like, that freaks me out a little bit. I love her, so of course I cannot wait to read this book. So the next question is the most anticipated release for the second half of the year, and I feel like I just said like a really quite serious like literary book for the previous question. For this one, it's gonna be Gold by Raven Kennedy, the final book in the Plated Prisoner series, which is just the trashiest but most amazing dark fantasy romance series. Honestly, sometimes we need a little bit of versatility in our life. But this is going to be the final installment in the Plated Prisoner series. I haven't actually read the 4th one yet, and like every single day it's a struggle because I want to pick up the 4th one immediately, but I want to space it out because this book doesn't come out till December, and I know that as soon as I finish the 4th book, I'm going to want to read the final book, but I won't have my hands on it for a really long time. So this is definitely an anticipated release for me. I actually started reading the Plated Prisoner series this year, and it's just so addicting. I love it so much. Like, the way I feel about this series is the same way I felt about the Vampire Academy series, where I know that it's not literary masterpieces, but it's just so much fun. I love it so much. The Plated Prisoner series is a King Midas retelling, and we follow our main character Orin, who is kind of a prisoner of war. She's very much stuck in this war between kings, but the character development that we've seen from her throughout the series is just so powerful, and I love her so much as a fantasy heroine. So I cannot wait to see how the series wraps up, and of course this is going to be one of my most anticipated releases for the second half of the year. I also want to say that I love making anticipated releases videos. I have one that I uploaded in like December last year for 2023, and I will be filming another one coming out this month for my most anticipated 2023 releases for the second half of the year. So expect to see this book in that video, but also I think over 50 new books that are coming out from like July to December 2023, and I'm really excited for that video. So I hope you guys are as well, because there are some really exciting books coming out. The next question is the biggest disappointment so far this year, and I'm really upset about this one. I read this recently. If you saw my screen time to reading vlog that I uploaded recently, you'll know what this is, but it's The League of Gentlewomen Witches by India Holton. I'm so devastated that I did not love this as much as I thought I would. I gave it 2 stars, and the reason why this is so disappointing is because this is the second book in like a companion novel series called the Dangerous Damsels series, and it's a series of historical romances which also have fantasy elements in them because we follow like pirates and witches and assassins, and it's really fun and exciting. I loved the first book so much, but unfortunately I gave this book 2 stars. I felt like the characters weren't very well fleshed out, and the relationship just developed way too fast. So there wasn't any actual real development. Do you know what I mean? Like, it just happened. So it was a really disappointing read, which meant that like because of all those reasons I didn't find it as funny and charming. So yeah, this is very much a disappointment for me. I was highly anticipating giving this one a 5 stars, much like I rated the first book in the series. I do own the 3rd book, and it is on my June TBR, so I'm hoping to read that very soon, and at least now I know that my expectations won't be as sky high as they were for this one. So hopefully that means that like I might enjoy the 3rd book a little bit better. But yeah, this one was definitely very upsetting. The next question is the biggest surprise, and for me it absolutely is Once Upon a Broken Heart by Stephanie Garber. I picked this up as like a fun YA fantasy that I may or may not like, I may or may not get into, and I gave it a go a few months ago, and it was an immediate 5 stars for me, which was so shocking. Like, I hadn't really been all that into fantasy around the time that I picked this up, and now I'm diving headfirst back into YA fantasy and adult fantasy and those really fun fantastical reads. This was such a massive surprise for me, but like such a pleasant one. I loved it so much, and now I just cannot wait to continue the trilogy for this one as well. Again, much like the Plated Prisoner series, I'm putting off reading the 2nd book because the final book in this trilogy I don't think comes out till like October. So obviously I might read Ballad of Never After maybe next month or in August. I'm not totally sure. Oh my goodness, yeah, I just really loved this. This follows our main character Evangeline, and she makes a deal with one of the fates, and basically it's pretty like deal with the devil vibes. Jax, our like fate, he definitely isn't like devilish, but you know, he engages in a lot of trickery, and I just feel like I can't really explain to you what this book is about because so much happens, but it's so well paced and it just reads like a beautiful fairy tale. I love it so much. The descriptions of this fantasy world were some of the best descriptions I've seen in YA fantasy, and I genuinely loved it. It felt like a warm hug. It felt like my inner child was healed reading this, and I absolutely loved it. So this was definitely one of my biggest surprises. The next question is your favorite new author, and that can be a debut author or a new to you author, and I definitely had to choose an author that I have never read from like before this year. But since reading my first book from them, I have now read 4 of their books and I just eat them up. I eat them up, and that has to be Frida McFadden, who wrote The Housemaid and The Housemaid's Secret, and then I've read another 2 books from that author. I love her thrillers so much. I'm always loving being on the hunt for like new thrillers, and when I find a thriller author that I like, I need to read their entire backlist, and that's what I'm working through with Frida McFadden. Their thrillers are just so easy to read, so bingeable, and so exciting. Like every single thriller I have read by her, I've read in the space of like 1 day. I absolutely cannot put them down, so she's definitely a new author that I'm really loving. I find myself always wanting to pick up one of her books. Like I'm always so drawn to them. All of her thrillers are on Kindle Unlimited, right? So when I'm looking through my Kindle, I'm always like, okay, I know I shouldn't read a Frida McFadden. I want to save them all, but like I always am drawn to picking up books by her. So definitely a new author for me, like definitely a thriller author that I really recommend. Definitely not like the best thrillers in the world. Like they're super formulaic and tropey, but I really love them. They're so addicting, and she just has this writing style which makes you want to keep reading. So Frida McFadden is definitely a new fave. The next question is your newest fictional crush, and I'm not gonna lie, I don't usually get crushes on fictional characters, but I think like when I think about all the fictional characters I've read from, like all the romance heroes and heroines, I can think of one that I'd be like, yeah, you're sexy, you're hot, and I have a crush on you, and that is Delilah Green from Delilah Green Doesn't Care. I loved her so much. Like I could just tell she's sexy. Like I can just tell she's beautiful and amazing and stunning and gorgeous, and I can just tell that if she spoke to me in real life, if I met her in real life and she said something to me, I'd be like, oh my god, oh my god, shut up. You know, like I would be like that with her. So Delilah Green Doesn't Care is a sapphic romance, and it's a small town, not quite enemies to lovers, but like a little bit, and it's just so good. Delilah Green is amazing. She doesn't take any shit. She's had a bit of like a sad childhood, and so seeing how she's kind of like grown from that, I just really loved her journey, and she's just beautiful. And I know that like I would get a bit flustered if we were speaking to each other in real life. So definitely a little fictional crush for me. The next question is your newest favorite character, and immediately, like, I don't know. I had no idea. I've read so many beautiful characters, amazing characters this year, but like when I just thought about the question, the first book that popped into my mind was Queenie by Candice Carty-Williams, and the titular character, Queenie. I loved her so much. Reading this book, like Queenie's one of those characters who, she's definitely got her flaws. You're reading her story and you're going like, what are you doing, bestie? Like you are making some poor decisions, you are being very frustrating. But throughout all of these moments, I still really loved her, and I still really cared about her, which made this to be a really good read. And I don't know, I just really loved Queenie. I saw so many of my own flaws like in Queenie, and I saw so many of my like friends in the way that Queenie like talks to her friends. It was just such a heartwarming read and made me feel super at home like in her story. There's definitely some other stuff in here that I cannot relate to, because Queenie does go through quite a lot of like racism and microaggressions, so obviously that's not something I can relate to. Seeing her go through those things was very heartbreaking, but I just loved her. It's definitely a new favorite character, and I highly recommend this book as well. This is a 5-star for me. The next question is a book that made you cry. I've cried at a lot of books, honestly. Most of these books I have cried in, but I wanted to choose something different from these, so I chose Full Tilt by Emma Scott. This is a romance that I gave 4 out of 5 stars. I really loved it, and it definitely made me sob. It's so heartbreaking. We follow our main characters, Casey and Jonah, and Casey is like a recovering alcoholic and Jonah has a heart condition. Like they go through so much tragedy, but I love them so much, and it definitely was very heartbreaking. Like how it was written, how the ending was written was so beautiful. So this one definitely made me cry. So if you're looking for like a very heartbreaking read, I recommend. Next we had a book that made you happy, and this book was a really strong contender for my favorite book of the year, but I saved it for this question instead because it made me so freaking happy. Like a smile, a massive grin on my face the entire time I was reading it, and that is The Cat Who Saved Books by Sosuke Natsukawa. I loved this so much. This one also made me cry, to be honest. It made me cry because of how much I love reading. Like, I know that sounds ridiculous, but it made me cry because of how much I love books and also cats, but books mostly. I mean, I love them both equally, but I don't know, I just loved this book so much. It made me so happy. It reminded me of why I love storytelling so much, as well as just being a really well told story. I don't know, it was kind of meta in that sense, but I loved it so much. It was so beautifully written, and this is a book that I will recommend to literally any reader. Like, I just feel like any reader can get something out of this book. It made me so happy. And it's set in a small bookstore in Tokyo, and there is a talking cat who is trying to make our main character go on all these adventures to try and save books that are not being very well treated. It's just beautiful. I love it, and I highly recommend. The next question is, what is the most beautiful book you've acquired this year? And it has to be, I've already even mentioned it in this video, but it has to be my hardback copy of The Ballad of Never After by Stephanie Garber. I almost never buy hardbacks, but when I saw this one, I just knew that I had to because it's so gorgeous. And the best thing about it is, like, under the dust jacket, look how beautiful that is. Like, I love it so much. Also, one of the best maps I've ever seen. Like, are you kidding me? I did mention before that I have been putting off reading this because I don't want to have to wait too long for the final book in the trilogy to come out, but I really want to read it soon, and it's just so beautiful sitting on my bookshelf. Like, I need it in my brain, so I'll probably be reading this very soon. But definitely the most beautiful book that I've acquired this year. The next question is, what other books do you need to read before the year ends? And obviously I have quite a bit that I want to read before the year ends. I actually did a video at the beginning of the year that was like 23 books I need to read in 2023, and I definitely haven't read all of them just yet. But I think one of the main ones on that video that I really want to read is The Winners by Frederick Buckman. This is the third book in the Beartown trilogy, and I read book 1 and 2 last year. So it's been quite a while since then for me to pick up this one, but I still remember everything that happened in those 2 books, and I just really want to finish the trilogy. I don't know why I've been putting it off. I think it's just because it's so big, but I love the Beartown trilogy so much. I love Frederick Buckman's writing style. It's so emotional. It has so much heart and depth, and yeah, I don't know, I just love this really emotional, heartbreaking book series about a small hockey town in Sweden. So yeah, this is definitely going to be a high priority for me for the last half of the year. And the final question is a bit of a random one. It is your favorite book to movie adaptation this year, and I haven't watched a lot of films, and I literally was trying to rack my brain, and I actually don't think I have watched a single book to movie adaptation this year. So the movie I'm going to choose is like the closest I could think of, because it is an adaptation, and I suppose you could make it kind of bookish, but the movie I chose is the Dungeons and Dragons movie. Why was this such a riot? I loved this movie so much. I highly recommend it. I thought it was going to be awful, but it was so much fun. So if you love fantasy, you don't even need to be a Dungeons and Dragons player. Like, it definitely helps, all of the references to the game, but you definitely don't need to be. Like, if you just like appreciate a fantasy story, a fantasy adventure, then this is like very good. I really enjoyed it. It was so funny, really not that deep, just a good time, and the cast was excellent. I don't know, I recommend this movie if you like fantasy. So I'm just gonna say that for my final answer. So those are all the questions, and that is a very brief kind of wrap up of how I feel about my reading this year. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you do watch a lot of my videos, let me know if there were any answers to the questions that you definitely saw coming, like you knew that was gonna be my answer, or if you were like, if you thought it was gonna be something else. Also, I know this is a tag video, so if you wanna do this video, I tag you. If you're watching this and you're like, I wanna do the mid-year book freakout tag, here you go. I'm tagging you right now. Go ahead and do it. I will leave the questions down below, like I mentioned before. But yeah, guys, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you all so much. A cheeky reminder that all my socials are linked down below, including my Bookstagram and also my Patreon. So if you do want extra content from me, that's all on the page. But yeah, I love you all so much. Thank you for spending the last like 20 minutes with me, and I will see you very soon in another video. Bye.